Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. It's episode number 129 of the podcast, and we're talking about the San Jose Earthquakes 3-3 draw that we saw on Wednesday night. But we're also going to get into some other topics, including this Jordi Alba contract extension. And so, before we talk about that Quakes game on the West Coast and where Inter Miami is as a team, let me start by saying I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. How are you feeling today, my man?
It's been a long week. I've been very busy, so I'm a little bit distracted. And I'm hoping that you will take my mind off other things and put my mind back on into Miami. So good to be here. The weekend's almost close. I'm looking forward to it. How are you doing?
I'll be honest. I'm getting too old to be staying up as late as I did on Wednesday night. I'm envious of you skipping the post game reaction to get some much needed sleep because I didn't feel great all day yesterday. But I'm feeling better today, and I appreciate that. And so I'm looking forward to not having to do any more games that late for the rest of the season. And I think I'll feel much better if that's the case. Um, let's get into Jordi Alba because this is the big news off the field for quite some time. And I think could be a dramatic change in the course of this franchise if we are reading the tea leaves right. And of course, we might not be because sometimes we are just a couple of knuckleheads. But Jordi Alba, new contract until 2027. First thoughts on the extension, and then we'll get into some of the implications.
Fantastic news, huh? We were talking about how perhaps Lionel Messi is not going to re-sign. Perhaps we're moving away from the Barcelona force soon. This seems like they absolutely doubled down on the fact that Inter Miami is fully the Messi project. And I think he's going to end his career here. We can talk about the implications of this. I know this is Jordi Alba re-signing, but I think this has a lot bigger implications for Inter Miami as an organization as a whole. And honestly, I still think Jordi Alba is absolutely fantastic as a player, the best left back in this league. Yes, he hasn't started well this season, but you know what? He's picking up steam, and that's what I absolutely love. And I think this is phenomenal news. I was very excited when you sent me this graphic, and I was relieved as well.
Yeah, him signing through 2027 means that he's going to finish his career at Inter Miami. Now, of course, he could retire at any point and decide, I don't want to continue playing. But as far as going to another team, I don't think we ever thought that was going to happen. But now I think this confirms that Jordi Alba is going to retire as an Inter Miami player. And you would have, I think, imagined that this project would have first went through a Lionel Messi extension. And we'll get into some of the implications of that now, because I do think that's what this is pointing to. Not just Jordi Alba, but Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez also remaining. No, I'm sorry, not Luis Suarez. Sergio Busquets also remaining with Inter Miami over the next couple seasons. I think this is what they wanted out of their star players, and that will always leave them the freedom to say, actually, I'm not having fun anymore. I want to retire. But this will lock them into their contracts for Inter Miami, and it will lock them into Inter Miami as being a part of this club, which is, I think, a good thing for Inter Miami. I know there are people that are very frustrated with the Big Four, and maybe they aren't playing as well as they had in the past. But I think if you're talking about building a core to have success in this league, this is what you want. Maybe we can get into some of the specifics about Jordi Alba in a second, but let's talk about the bigger picture. Does getting Jordi Alba mean we're keeping Lionel Messi, we're keeping Sergio Busquets, and maybe Suarez?
If you asked me to put my money on it, I would say yes. Busquets, maybe. Depends how much willing he is to actually continue his career after the season and how his body is feeling. But I think if you consider a scenario where all of them are thinking about continuing in world football and don't think about their retirement, I think this is a signal that Inter Miami is going to re-sign all four of them, or all three of them now. So for me, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly, as you said, I think this means Messi is re-signing.
Yeah, and again, I just want to reiterate that they will have the freedom to retire if that's what they want, because that's how it works in sports. So this is more a confirmation that they intend to stay with Inter Miami until the end of their careers. And I do expect the same thing to happen with Messi soon. And maybe we're even going to get official word when it it's a time that makes sense for Inter Miami, and the actual agreement is already done in principle. This agreement, I don't think, is a coincidence, comes the day after a frustrating road trip where they get 1 from 6 on the from the Western Conference. Coming back from San Jose, they get the signature of Jordi Alba, but also they get to put it out there and get a little bit of a feel-good story going into the weekend. Try and change the narrative because, again, Wednesday night, you weren't there for the post-game reaction, but it's a lot of like mixed vibes, and it feels good to get a win on, or get a draw on the road, but the long-term trajectory doesn't exactly feel like it's changed. This is, I think, a positive story for Inter Miami fans to get on board with. And so I think probably the same is going to happen with Lionel Messi, where it's agreed to, but they're just going to drop the news when it's most advantageous for the club. And with the Club World Cup coming around, maybe it will be centered around that. But I do think that's still a done deal.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I don't even want to consider the eventuality that Lionel Messi is going to leave Inter Miami because I don't believe in it. And I think that's going to happen eventually. As you said, they're probably looking for the right time to drop that news. Depends on how the results keep going and what happens after this. But um, they want to generate as much positivity and as much likes and clicks from that announcement. So I think this is just the start. We've seen Jordi Alba sign, and hopefully this gets the dominoes rolling.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into what this contract means, because the big unknown is, what is the money for this contract? Is he going to be a DP player? We were told over the course of the past few months that Jordi Alba's option being extended last winter was going to put him above the DP threshold, and he was going to have to take up one of those 3 DP slots. That has not been confirmed by the players' union, but that has been sort of the understanding from people around MLS and around Inter Miami. And so I always thought that if that was the case, it's probably not by a whole lot. And it's also something that they might be able to create a new contract for him that would take him under that threshold for this season and reopen up a DP slot moving forward. So it wouldn't shock me if we no longer have DP Jordi Alba and we instead have Cam Jordi Alba, just like Luis Suarez is, just like Telasco Segovia, Tadeo Allende, and some of those other players that are not quite at that DP threshold. And that would open up a DP spot for Inter Miami, or potentially a U22 spot if they wanted to go that direction for the summer. Do you think that's what happened? Is that your expectation? I know we're just speculating here, but this timing does, as we head into next month where we can start to sign new players, does mean we potentially could sign another big name player.
Ideally, I would like to think that. I would hope that's the case because obviously we do want a new big name signing. I don't know if that makes logical sense. Why would Jordi Alba for 2 months go on to a DP contract and then get reduced down again to TAM? I'm not well versed in the background of how the contract situation works. You have a lot more understanding of that. But I would hope that's the case. And we're heading into a transfer window where I feel like Inter Miami needs to make some important moves because right now we're looking a little bit on choppy waters. We need a few areas that we can improve in. And I think you and I can both agree that a big superstar signing is really going to put some of the negativity to rest and give Inter Miami fans a big boost. I hate to say that because obviously having a signing paper over all your cracks isn't the best, but I would want another DP coming in, and I think all Inter Miami fans would agree with me.
Yeah, and I've also thought that it doesn't necessarily have to be a DP to get a big name, right? If Angel Di Maria was making $3 million at Benfica, it doesn't feel crazy that he could take a $1.7 million contract. For example, I'm not suggesting he's the guy or anything like that, but I think that's an easy name to sort of attach this to. We have said over the past couple of weeks that it's not a talent issue, and so I do want to just remind people that at least I don't think that a new big signing is going to paper over the cracks in the way that I think you just said, but it would be nice. And I think it would give another tool to the toolkit for whoever the coach is moving forward, be it
Just
Javier
to
Mascherano or not.
to clarify my statement, I think the signing is less about the on-field performances and more about the narrative and um, the energy around the club and the vibes around the club. I think it's going to uplift that more than anything on the pitch. So that for me is always the case, and in this case particularly so because it feels like, and again, you and I both agree on this, that it's not about the talent of the players. It's a much bigger situation than that. So I agree that maybe a big signing doesn't necessarily help on the performances on the pitch, but it'll be a big boost to the fans and might uplift the vibes. Because I can already see a scenario where Angel Di Maria comes in and it actually really changes the vibes and the energy around the club. So um, that's what I was getting at with my statement.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just to clarify that quickly, Suarez, Busquets. I think we both assume this implies that Messi is also going to get that extension. But Sergio Busquets has been on a big contract for the last year and a half. He's the third highest player in the MLS. I have heard people say that they should try and bring him back as a TAM. I would expect he would be. I don't know what that situation is going to be like, but how would you feel about bringing Busquets back for another year if it's on a DP contract versus if it's on a TAM contract, and then also Suarez?
I would want to bring back Busquets every single day of the week. He's been phenomenal. And I think this season his performances have been under the radar like they usually are, but I think he's been performing really well. For me, he's been one of the best players on the pitch and very calm, composed. The only issue with Busquets is we get a little bit limited in the athleticism that we have in the midfield. And I feel like there are certain games in which we need a little bit more legs and energy in the midfield. But I still, the talent that he has, the quality that he has, you can't replace that. The experience that he has, you can't replace that. And the things sometimes he does just to calm things down, to make sure the tempo is flowing. Again, the situation around the club right now is such that you can question the players for not putting in the performances and getting the points. But that I think is secondary. If you go back 6 weeks, maybe 10 weeks, a little bit more, all of us would have been swooning over giving Busquets a DP contract. So I would want to make that assumption and make that decision based on 6, 10 weeks ago rather than yesterday's performance. So, or this last 2 weeks performance.
Yeah, and to add to that, we've seen these guys be huge successes in this league, and I think both of us assume that if we were playing a little bit of a different style, we would get a lot more out of them, and we would get that value that whatever their contract says they're being paid. It's probably exceeding that in terms of value. Quick other notes: Baltasar Rodriguez, we were told, got a recurring issue with his hamstring, so it's the same thing that he's been dealing with for the past several weeks. We can talk about him again later when we get into the game. And then David Ruiz returning to practice slowly. I don't think he was doing full training today, but he's sort of making his way back. We haven't seen him in quite some time. I think the last game he played was on the road in Jamaica Cavaliers. So it's been a while from him for him, and it'll be nice to get a potential defensive midfield option back.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, let's talk about this game because Inter Miami plays a game on the West Coast that we talked about in the pregame show. Was, I think, a 1-point result was fine. We were more looking to see what does the performance look like, and some of the things we were looking for, like Jordi Alba being more advanced high up the field and them having much more of an offensive game plan. There were things we were looking for in the game. We saw some of them. We saw some things we hated. We saw some things that we liked. Let's get into it. But before we do, you didn't have a chance to rant or riot or be pleasantly surprised with the performance because you went to bed early on Wednesday. So I give the floor to you. What were your top line thoughts from this game?
I thought it was a good game to watch, especially as a neutral. It was a fantastic game to watch if you didn't have any equities in this tie. I thought both sides had their opportunities. It was a very exciting game, a fun game, especially the first half where it was 3-2 by the end of it, and it felt like this would be a high-scoring game. And I think we talked about how this was going to be a high-scoring game. So lived up to the billing, lived up to the standards that it set itself. Quality-wise, maybe a little bit underwhelming, at least from Inter Miami's side. I thought Ustari was very poor. We're going to talk about that for sure. We looked good in certain parts of our offense. I really liked how Jordi Alba was playing and the way Jordi Alba was playing and what the instructions to Jordi Alba were. So a lot of positive there. defensively shambolic. Do not know what we were doing for all three goals, and I'm getting worried because this Inter Miami team is not just not creating chances anymore. They're also not they're also conceding a lot of goals. I think we've conceded 17 goals in 6 games. That's a lot. That's almost 3 goals per game, and it's not sustainable. It is definitely not how champions play. But for one-off game on the road, a huge distance away from home, traveling all the way to San Jose against a really good team that has some very important and good players in their offense, can score a lot of goals. I thought the game lived up to its billing and we had a few positive moments, but overall, I still think there's a lot of work to be done. And I don't know if this game does anything to make me feel at ease.
Well, I just want you to know in the time you took to say those things, Inter Miami has already given up a goal, and it's now 1-1 after about a minute and a half of gameplay. Um, what an exciting start, but unbelievably frustrating after you get a great lead in the first 35 seconds. Jordi Alba off of a set piece. Now, I don't think it was the design of the set piece, but Jordi Alba puts the ball into the box. Maxi Falcone has kind of a wide open header. It felt like they were not prepared to defend that early, and they weren't there for Falcone. But then a minute later, Oscar Ustari puts errant pass, lack of concentration, basically kicks it right to the defender, pops it over to Chicho Arango. He puts in the back of the net. That great vibe that you texted me about after 35 seconds was gone after a minute and a half. What did you make of that whole sequence?
I'll tell you exactly what I texted you. I said, maybe we shouldn't be doing a podcast because we don't know anything about Inter Miami, apparently, because we scored in the first 30 seconds. And then you said, maybe not. And then 30 seconds later, I texted you back saying, never mind, because it was the most hilarious sequence. 3 minutes. First goal is always, when you score that quickly, it always goes down to the other team being unprepared for, just not turned on, not switched on. Obviously, when you get an early corner, that's very helpful. And it was a great ball from Jordi Alba, even better header from Maxi Falcone. Nobody marking him. So overall, poor defending from San Jose. Inter Miami took complete advantage of that. And I thought that was a great way to start the game, build a little bit of confidence. And then when you should be playing with confidence, when you should maybe tone the tempo down a bit, control the ball, do what Inter Miami loves to do and be in possession, we go out, create our own problems, and a really poor pass from Ustari. I thought Maxi Falcone passing back to him was perfectly fine. He wasn't under any pressure. He had plenty of chance to pass the ball straight into Noah Allen's feet, and he just fluffed it. He just passed it ahead, and San Jose then took an opportunity of Inter Miami not being turned on, and easy tap in for who else but Chicho Arango. And honestly, I thought this game was going to be like 6-6 or something with the way teams were playing. It was all written there. And yeah, as I said, quality maybe not there, but excitement for sure.
Definitely. That's on Ustadi, right? Well, hold on. We went and spent the entire pregame show talking about how we don't know how Inter Miami is going to score goals in this game if it's not from just an incredible moment from Messi. And of course, that's why we felt a little dumb 35 seconds in, because Maxi got home puts in the back of the head. As far as the first goal, that's an Ustadi one. I see some people in the chat saying it's on Noah Allen.
No.
Noah Allen, if he was absolutely locked on and prepared for it, gone and made a game-saving tackle or a goal-saving tackle, maybe if he's a superstar in that moment, but that is 100% on Oscar Ustadi for, I think, a lack of concentration early in the game, and just kind of taps it without looking and sort of taps it right to, I believe it was Christian Espinosa, but either way, it's 1-1 after a minute and a half or 2.5 minutes. Second goal comes in the 37th minute. It kind of dies down for about half an hour. Bo LaRue with a really nice shot from outside the box. Kind of an unlucky bounce for Busquets. I thought he stepped up into it, created a loose ball, and it doesn't go to an Inter Miami player. Bo LaRue steps up to it and shoots from outside the box. Again, for me, I thought the only player that really should have done better was Oscar Ustadi. He dives to his left, he gets a hand on it, and it's not enough to deflect it out from goal. So just like that, San Jose goes up 2-1.
You can make the case that perhaps the defender should have closed him down a little bit.
Well, I think that was Busquets, and
Yeah,
he actually dislodges the ball from someone else in the midfield, and it just
and it just
bounces up to
unlucky.
LaRue.
Yeah,
He tries to recover, but it's not like he was out of position or lack of concentration. It was just the way the ball bounced, in my opinion. I saw some people give the midfield some trouble
Back.
for all the goals that thank you, for all the goals that were allowed in this game, and so I was paying extra attention to that, and I felt that one was probably one in the moment where you might have blamed Busquets a little bit, but then once you sort of rewatch how the entire play unfolds, it is one of those plays in soccer. It's a nice shot by LaRue. I still think Ustari should get down there and get it, but
Absolutely. No,
that's really all I have
100%.
to say about
I think this goal, majority of the blame has to fall on Oscar Starry. Slow in making that dive, gets a hand on it. It's not even in the corner, so you can make a save, and just not strong enough, just deflects it into the corner. And again, I think he's looked poor this entire game, and that just stamps it, right? Should have done better there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and to be fair to him, there's a world where Inter Miami wins this game 3-1, and that's like a sort of offhanded mistake that wasn't a huge part of the run of play, and we kind of forgive it. It's the context of everything going on right now and the poor defensive performances, and it just all feels like everything is
But it's
magnified, and that
also
one is part of that.
both goals, I think, come from
I
him,
agree.
and
No, I agree.
that exacerbates the whole thing, right?
Right.
He had a hand to play in both goals, literally. So, um, unfortunate, and Inter Miami down again and needing to come back once more.
Yeah, and it looked like they were going to do it in the 41st minute. Allende with a really nice cross to Kramaski. It looks like he's going to put a tap in into the back of the net. Instead, he tries to maybe square it to Yannick Bright. Doesn't get that right. Fluffs the opportunity. Inter Miami still down 2-1. Do you want to stop there, or can we go straight to the Messi to Alba to Allende goal for goal number 2 that ties it up in the 44th minute?
Beautiful goal, by the way. And you missed a key player in that goal, who is Yannick Bright. Who gets us out of trouble, dribbles the ball out of pressure, passes it into open space where Messi is. Messi with a beautiful ball into Jordi Alba. Jordi Alba with a fantastic cross into Tadeo Allende. And Tadeo Allende with the easy shot. Powered into the net, but easy shot. And there you go, Inter Miami's 2-2. One thing I do want to say, and I may forget this later, but all three of Inter Miami's goals came from the wide side. And that's what we've been screaming for the last 5 weeks. Inter Miami needs to create more opportunities in the wings. And the fact that Jordi Alba was involved in practically every single goal, or at least the left side or the right side was involved in every single goal, it was phenomenal. I think beautifully constructed, and I really enjoyed that play. Quintessential Inter Miami, and I thought for a second we may be back.
Again, we talked about how is this team going to score goals. Tadeo Allende, a guy who hasn't scored a ton of goals lately, has that in him. And so for him to get on the scoreboard, I thought was a win for Inter Miami if you're looking for the positives. But of course, it doesn't last long. 5 minutes later, Ian Harkes with a nice shot put into the bottom corner. That one, a little tougher. That one, I think, was the most egregious defensive fall apart for Inter Miami.
Again, I don't know if it was egregious, because you can always almost still say, yeah, this player could have done this player could have done this. But I think everyone in that midfield should have just pushed up a bit more, be a little bit more tight to their man. And the fact that Ian Harkes was able to get off a shot from there, when just 5 minutes ago you had Leroux do the exact same thing, just means repetitive mistakes, right? Not being concentrated, not being switched on, not pushing up to your man, not being tight. And it felt like heads were dropping again. I was like, here we go. Back to what we were used to over the last 3 weeks. Just poor defensively. I don't know who's the one to blame in this situation, because I think there are a couple of players there. I think Yannick Bright was there who could have pushed up. Noah Allen perhaps could have pushed up as well. But just be tighter to make it difficult for them to get that shot off. And then if it gets deflected and goes in, that's a different story. But still could have been slightly tighter up. And I don't think Ustari could have done much in this one, right?
Yeah, I agree. Second half, Inter Miami gets the equalizer in the 52nd minute. Messi carries the ball into the box, taps it out to Baltasar Rodriguez, who I should mention made his Inter Miami debut at halftime, who whips in a hard low cross into Allende for a second tap in. And here it is. We can talk about Baltasar, but the truth is Allende getting 2 goals may have been the most important thing for me in this game, because so much of my thoughts going into the last couple of weeks is how are we going to score goals if it's not Lionel Messi being incredible? And here we go, scoring 3 goals with 2 that I think are predictable patterns of play. The Maxi Falcone one is going to happen 3 times a year, but getting Allende sort of at the edge of the box, I'm sorry, at the sort of edge of the 6-yard box, whipping in hard low crosses and letting him take 1.5 steps to just put the tap in. I think that is a recipe for success, something Inter Miami can find repeatable, and that's exactly what they did in this game, getting it twice.
I want to divide this thought up into 2 separate talking points. And can I request you that we talk about the Allende talking point later when we do the awards? I want to talk about the one that you mentioned about patterns of play. The fact that we scored 2 very similar looking goals where you were like, oh, this is exactly what we did both times, or at least similar ways in which we scored, using the wide channels, the fullbacks pushing high up and putting the ball in. In this instance, the winger putting the ball in, goes to show, okay, there has been some pattern of play in this game that we've seen offensively. When was the last time you and I said that, right? It's been a while. So that for me is a major positive. I thought Segovia in the middle looked really good, drove the ball up. Again, Yannick Bright, Segovia, both involved in winning the ball up in the midfield. Lots of space for Segovia to run into, puts it off into Messi. I, for a minute, thought Messi was actually going to turn central and try to take on the players and score, because that's what he's been trying to do a lot. But trusts Baltazar on that right-hand side, puts the ball into him. Really good, hard driving cross in a very dangerous area. And I think that's what we've been missing. Dangerous balls into the box. It doesn't matter if somebody's not at the end of those balls, right? Someone will eventually get at the end of them. But if you don't put the balls in, then you're not taking any opportunities. You're not creating any opportunities. So I really like the fact that he had a hard drive into the box with the cross, and then Allende once again getting on the end of it and scoring. So for me, the biggest positive was the fact that we scored 2 goals that were very similar in how we constructed him. The problem was we also conceded 2 goals that were very similar in exactly how they were constructed, but still, you got to take the positives with the negatives, and that for me definitely stood out in this game.
No, and it was something that this team can find repeatable. You mentioned that it doesn't always have to result in a chance on goal, but by whipping those low crosses in sort of towards the back post, that forces the defense to react, and it will open space for Messi or Suarez if you want to have that cutback pass. And then the same thing with Allende being that lead runner. He can do that without being sort of formationally positioned as the striker. He can do that as the left winger or the right winger. He can still make those runs in. And that's exactly what we saw. He was on the left side for this goal, received it from Baltasar, who was playing on the right side. The first goal he scores is from Alba, who, cutting it from his left or from the left side. So he can do it from both sides of the field. That can be a real weapon. And I don't think it disrupts the patterns of play that Suarez and Messi and Alba want to do on a regular basis. It just adds to the dynamism and potential options that this team has. Great to see. I think really promising for Inter Miami as we start to figure out how to score more goals.
And it's the dynamics, right? The fact that Messi could go central, but he could also go right, gives the defender a couple of things to think about. They're thinking, oh shit, if Baltazar Rodriguez is free on that side, maybe the ball gets dropped into him and he's able to create something. He's not constantly thinking, okay, Messi's not going to go to the right side. He's going to keep the ball to himself, just go central. So that for me is better, definitely an improvement. We've seen glimpses of what we've been wanting Inter Miami to do. And at this point, I'm going to take it. I'm going to say that's a good step. One step, but a step in the right direction. So let's hope we can build on from this.
Yeah, and it also has felt sometimes like we've seen patterns of play that we liked and were interesting, but they didn't quite come off. And then the team backed away from them. And this time, it actually did come off with 2 goals. And I hopefully think that that's going to have a bigger impact on
and it was very simple.
Javier Mascherano's decision making when it comes to who he's going to play and what positions.
I don't think it's going to change who he's going to play, but I think how he's going to
Yeah,
play might change. And it all starts with Jordi Alba, man. You give him the freedom to get involved in the attack, he's going to get 2 assists. So that's what we've been missing, and that's where you have to start. You have to start by allowing at least your Barcelona four to do what they do best. And thankfully, Jordi Alba has been allowed to do that this game, and that's how we got that 1 point. So good for
yeah.
us, at least in this game.
Just moving forward a little bit, 62nd minute, I thought was the last big moment of the game. Christian Espinosa scores, but it gets called offsides because of offside in the build up to the play. Another defensive breakdown that I think if you weren't paying close attention and you're just watching the highlights or whatever, you might not think much of it because it ends up not being a goal. But again, I thought the defense was really poor in this particular moment.
Noah Allen
Ustari
got a
was
bit
pretty.
rinsed.
He did, and I thought Oscar Ustari also had another really slow
Yeah.
reaction to the shot on goal, and so disappointing, I think, from that one. But it gets called offsides. Inter Miami escapes with a 3-3, and I want to refrain from using the word escapes because I do think in the last 15 minutes they were the better team and pushing for the winner, and they felt great about it.
We felt great about it because I think
did,
this
yeah.
was the one where you and I, again, we've talked about hammering the balls into the box so that we actually create some opportunities and look like a team that's trying to go out and get the win. We didn't play defensive. We didn't sit back. We didn't absorb the pressure. We were actually trying to create something. Messi had a fantastic chance one-on-one with the keeper. That any other day, I would put my money on him to finish. And that's fine. He didn't score. That's okay. But the fact that we were seeing opportunities being created in itself was very positive. And again, one step in the right direction. Things we wanted to see improved. And that's what you have to now build on. When you need to go out and get the winner, you can't just sit back and hope to counter when the ball comes to you, especially in the last 10 minutes of the game. You're the dominant team. You're the better team in paper here. Go out, put the other team under the cosh, hammer chances at their goals. One of them may go in. Even if it doesn't go in, at least you feel like you had the dominant upper hand and deserved to win the game. And I think at the end, if you take just the last 10 minutes, we were the better side.
I agree. Guys, before we move on, I just want to say out loud, we just recently switched to a different streaming platform to do this, and we're not 100% comfortable with it. So I know we like to normally put the graphics on, I'm sorry, your comments on while we're sort of reading them and while we're talking, just so that they can get broadcasted a little bit, because we really do appreciate it. Not happening right now because we're not 1,000% comfortable with this new system. So we are live, but we're not doing that for now because we haven't exactly figured out how to do it well yet. So hopefully that can be something we get back to soon. Let's talk about San Jose, because I did think one of the biggest moments of this game was when Chicho Arango goes down in the 25th minute, leaves the game. He looked really dynamic. And as much as Joseph Martinez has had a sort of reemergence this season with San Jose, the quality he has is just doesn't compare to a Chicho Arango. He's such a dangerous striker. And when you partner him with Christian Espinosa up top, those two are so dynamic together. And I did think that their offense lost a little bit of a punch after he left. And there was several times for the last hour of the game where the ball got put into the middle and no one was there to really finish it off. A couple that go off someone's head, a couple that they kick it into their own leg, stuff like that. So I did think it was a huge benefit to Inter Miami that they didn't have to play Chicho Arango for more than 25 minutes.
Absolutely. I thought the fact that he got the goal in the first 3 minutes would really spur him on to actually go out and make more opportunities. Espinoza was looking fantastic as well. I thought
Yeah,
he had some really good moments. Unfortunate not to get that goal. He was called offside, and then creating some really dangerous opportunities. Them two together, I was very worried that we'd have to deal with them for the full 90 minutes. Uh, Unfortunately for San Jose fans, Chicha Arango went down, and they didn't bring on Jose Martinez until the second half. And that, I think, worked in Inter Miami's favor, not having that target man that Espinoza could play off of. We talked in the pregame show, this is a San Jose team that loves to play 1-1, like just passing the ball between themselves and moving the ball up that way. They still did that a fair few times, had some good opportunities, but it felt like Inter Miami was mostly in control once Chicha Arango went off. So worked out in our favor. Maybe on another day, this would have been a different scoreline, but I think we play the cards that are dealt to us, and Inter Miami ended up coming away with a point, and rightly so.
Yeah. Christian Espinosa looked really good, and I thought if those two were up there for a long portion of this game, it could have been a real problem. Inter Miami still gives up 3 goals. Like the second 2 goals came after that, but I thought it could have been worse. This San Jose team has a lot of offensive talent, not so much defensively, and so I think a lot of people were projecting a high-scoring game, and that's exactly what it turned out to be. Let's talk about Inter Miami. And let's start with, where is Inter Miami going to get their goals from moving forward? Because they score 3 goals. I thought that today Allende getting to the end line and putting in tap-ins is like a real weapon for Inter Miami. We haven't seen it a ton of over the course of the last couple months. Do we feel better about that? Was it a one-off? Was it against a bad defense? Was it something that's going to disappear as soon as Luis Suarez comes back into the lineup, which he surely will on Sunday? Like, do we actually feel better about this team scoring goals on a consistent basis now that we have, I guess, as of the last game, an informed Tadeo Allende? Or are we still, like, how are you feeling about that?
I think it's mixed. We've seen some instances where we can say there's been improvement in how we've been playing offensively in this last game. And we need to now repeat these things, because under Javier Mascherano, we haven't repeated the good habits and the good behaviors. And that's what we want to see in the next game. I want to see Jordi Alba high up on the pitch again. I want to see him putting those balls, dangerous balls, in once again. Allow your fullbacks to be a little bit more expansive. Use the wings as much as you like to use the center. That for me would be the starting point for you to actually start creating opportunities on a regular basis again. And I think there were a couple of really good performances. Allende, you've already talked about. Segovia, I thought, looked better when he was central for the majority parts of the game. There is some building block and foundation that you can build off of. I'm still not 100% convinced that we're going to score 3 goals a game. I still think it's going to take some time before we get back into our dangerous rhythm of scoring for fun. But there's definitely a foundation here that you can exploit. And by that, I mean, use your wings, put the ball into the box. And if it's not Allende, it's going to be Messi. If it's not Messi, it's going to be somebody else coming through from the midfield, getting at the end of those balls. But that's how you got to use the wings.
Yeah, I think you used the word that I kind of want to harp on for a second. That's foundation. Because until we see this team work well around Lionel Messi, you're not going to have your foundation, because he is going to have to be the focal point if you want to be as good as you can be. And he wasn't that involved in this game. He still had his impact, but it wasn't like the main way we were attacking was Lionel Messi getting the ball in that number 10 role and distributing or shooting or creating space or creating offense. He was involved. He gets an assist for both Allende goals, as is in terms of the second assist. Like he's a part of it, but it's not like it's still a dominant Messi world. And until that happens, a dominant Messi attack. And until that happens, I'm still going to think that it's a little fluky, or it's going to be inconsistent, or it's not going to be sort of the final form dominant version of what it should be. But it is, like you mentioned, really nice to know that we can score goals, like we've been saying for the last couple months. If we just push the ball wide and then push it back centrally, there is space there. And I think the more you do that, the more consistently you do that, the more you'll create space for Suarez and Messi in the middle, and then your offense can really take off. So could this be the first step towards getting there? Maybe, but until we see it all come full-fledged circle around Messi, I still think it could be a little inconsistent. So that's sort of where I'm at with the offense. It was great to see them score 3 goals. I think this Tadeo Allende thing is a thing that they should be going to more consistently, especially as they're in poor form over the last 6 weeks. But it's better than nothing, right?
And I do want to say, it's not just the fact that we're going outside and using the wings that's going to get us the goals. It's the dynamism. it keeps the defense guessing. What are they going to do now? Are they going to attack from the wide channels? Are they going to attack centrally? Because when you have a dangerous player out wide, guess what? It also creates space in the middle. So it doesn't always have to mean that for the entire game you're just going out wide and using those patterns of play. But just having that player up there means that Messi can now maybe drive a bit more centrally and get in the box where there's not 10 people surrounding him. So, yes, I completely agree with you. This is a foundation that we need to build on, but we haven't seen that in this Mascherano team yet, where we repeat good behaviors. And I think my next thing is going to be for our game on Sunday against Orlando. I want to see a little bit more of what I saw against San Jose. I want the similar things to repeat themselves. Obviously, you're playing a different team, but there's some basics that you need to do that you did in the San Jose game. And then I can say maybe we're now starting to build a consistent behavior that might get us results.
Yeah, and there's another aspect to this that we haven't touched on at all yet, and maybe we should do that now, where in order to create more offense, they've pushed Jordi Alba forward, and it has felt like the defense has fallen apart a little bit, at least in terms of how many goals they're allowing in. I think there's probably some bigger concerns there that don't have to do with the offense, but it's much better to be a team that scores a lot of goals and gives up a lot of goals than to be a team that scores not that many goals and also gives up a lot of goals. And I think when we're living in this messy world with our star players being Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez, Jordi Alba, you should be an offensive team. So let's get back to scoring 3 goals a game, and then we can start figuring out what personnel, what positioning we need to do on the back end to limit the number of goals we're allowing. But I do think that's a positive step. Second half, 70th minute, on a set piece, Javier Mascherano takes off Chelo Weigandt, and he puts on Gonzalo Lujan as a right back. I don't want to talk about Gonzalo Lujan again because we've done that a lot. But when I'm thinking about that move, it feels like a defensive substitution. Now, I don't exactly know what he sees.
It doesn't feel like one. It is one.
Okay.
It is a defensive substitution.
No, listen. Just because I think it's a defensive substitution, I don't know what Javier Mascherano thinks when it comes to Gonzalo Lujan and Chelo Weigandt. So it appears to me to be a defensive substitution, which means his earlier substitutions were just getting Baltasar on and then taking him off for the injuries. This is, I thought, him saying, let's lock down this 3-3 draw. And it was very defensive minded. And yet, about 10 minutes later, we put on David Martinez and Federico Redondo. We take off Bright and Segovia. And we actually dominate the last 15 minutes in terms of trying to create chances, trying to push the ball into the opposition half in a way that it felt like we should have been doing all game. How do you sort of circle the wagon on that? Because we're talking about Javier Mascherano maybe potentially learning some things, trying some new things, but it felt like the decisions he made were actually counter to what the team actually ended up producing. So I don't know. Maybe this is all just the players getting fed up and doing something for themselves.
I mean, there's evidence because apparently Javier Mascherano at his halftime interview said he wants the team to push higher up. So I think he wants to play more expansively.
They needed a goal at that point, though.
Yeah, but still, I mean, again, how do you consolidate that with the fact that he's putting on Lujan and not Ian Frey, who is an offensive substitution? So a lot of still question marks about how Javier Mascherano's thinking. Honestly, sometimes I get a bit of whiplash just thinking about how he's making these decisions, but I honestly don't have an answer, and hopefully we get an answer because it feels like he's saying one thing that he wants to play expansive, he wants to play higher up. He's doing completely other things that are counterproductive to that. So who do you believe, right?
Listen, the last substitute, and maybe we should end on this before we get into awards. Actually, no, we'll save it for awards because I'm sure we will get to it. Any final thoughts on this game, the way the team played, any tactical changes that we made that you want to get into before we get into awards?
No, I think we've discussed mostly everything, but the biggest takeaway that I can summarize from this game is some positives, some negatives. Let's focus on the positives and build on those, and hopefully then we can start fixing this team. Just got to make the most of those positive movements and behaviors that we had this game.
Okay, guys, time for awards. And if you haven't seen our show before, we give out 6 awards after every game: a heron of the match, a heron that flew north, and 2 individual awards each. And Saur, since you went first last time, it is my turn to go first this time. Now, I know you were pretty sleepy at the end of that game on Wednesday night, so maybe your brain wasn't quite working right. But now that you've had a chance to sort of think it over, isn't it obvious that Jordi Alba was the heron of the match?
Completely obvious. I don't think there's any other choice here. Maybe you could give it to Allende for scoring 2 goals, but I think the creator of those goals was Jordi Alba. He was involved in everything good in this game. That first, or the second goal that we scored at least, was a beautiful cross into Allende because it was difficult. We were a moving team. First of all, the pass from Messi into Alba was fantastic, but Alba with that first time cross into Allende was reminiscent of his old self from last season, and I absolutely love that. His first goal contribution, again, a really nice, a little bit loopy, but a really nice ball. Sat really well for Falcon, who had a good header in. So Jordi Alba involved in everything good that this Inter Miami team was doing in this game, and for me, I think absolutely hands down man of the match.
And he gets a new contract to celebrate, right? Uh, I
I mean,
teased
that's
it a
for me.
minute.
That's what he was missing, right?
Yeah, we teased it a minute ago, but he in the last 10 minutes was pushed higher up the field. They took Telasco Segovia out. Jordi Alba filled in as that left winger. Noah Allen moved to left back, and David Martinez came in as the left-sided center back. And that was the catalyst for us to be more offensive in those final 10, 15 minutes of the game. Thoughts on him playing as a left winger? Because I have generally not liked it. Um, I've generally thought that it kind of takes away from what you're trying to do on the left side. But with how Inter Miami's tried to play offensively, they've been so narrow-minded, so one-sided that I do think it's a fresh of breath air from what we've been doing. But what did you think?
No, I think we've used that last season as well. And in the last 10 minutes of the game, it's fine. I think when you're trying to attack, you need to push him up. Um, Gives you a little bit of stability to save yourselves from counter attacks when he's playing as the outright left winger and there's Noah Allen behind him to protect him. So I think that was the thinking behind that. And we did dominate the last 10 minutes. So for me, I think it kind of worked. I don't always want to see Jordi Alba in a left wing position. Obviously, I think he's a left back at the end of the day, but that's where offense is coming from. So in the last 10 minutes, I liked it.
I'm not sure if I want to see it again anytime soon, but I thought it worked in this game.
It's situational. It needs to depend
Situational.
on who you're playing and
Yeah.
what the game state is, and wouldn't always work, but it's fine.
Anything else about Jordi Alba? Because again, 2 assists. I mean, I thought the catalyst for us being better. I saw him run into the midfield a little bit on the rewatch. Like, he was just a player. And sometimes you want your best players to be players. And that's, I think, one of my biggest complaints this season from Javier Mascherano is having him be a defensive fullback, giving him the ability to have the same type of responsibility as Gonzalo Lujan or Chelo Weigandt. This is what it needs to be moving forward, I think.
And more than anything, I think this is vindication because it shows that the player is still there. He hasn't lost form. If you allow him to do what he enjoys doing on the pitch, what he's good at doing on the pitch, then he's going to put in the performance. I think Jordi Alba should be the template of how other players are treated. You put them in a position to succeed and they're going to give you performances. It's not a coincidence that this team, all starting 11 players, lost confidence at the same time. So you start by putting the players in the right position and you're going to see them perform and get you results. Yes, not ideal. There are situations and issues that we need to sort out with this team because we still conceded 3 goals, but still, Jordi Alba had a fantastic game and honestly a great professional because this season, since the start of the season, he hasn't looked good. And this was the first time where I thought to myself, he's back. So glad that he had that performance and well done to Jordi Alba.
For me, it's easy to say that it's not that he was poor. Like, I think looking back on it, it's been the instructions of Javier Mascherano to be more defensive, to try and be more solid in the back line. But by doing that, you take away this incredible skill that you have from Jordi Alba. He needs to be playing higher up the field because that's who he is. He's an attacking left back, and he's one of the best in history to do it. And so it's almost like it's really shameful, I think, when you're telling him he needs to go play back. If you can't figure out the defense around him, that's on you as a coach, not on him as a player. So I think this has to be what we are moving forward.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Give me your Heron that flew north.
I mean, as obvious as Jordi Alba was, there's only one contender for Heron that flew north, because he literally flew north, and that was Oscar Ustari. Well, actually, he didn't fly, because if he could fly, he would have saved those 2 goals. First goal, abysmal. Absolutely terrible, terrible goalkeeping, terrible use of his feet. Could have been a non-factor if he'd actually saved that second shot from Leroux. And then the third goal was fine, but still, I thought he was fairly poor today. So for his contributions in San Jose's goal scoring, I have to give it to Ustari. And I'll be honest, he's looked a step too slow in the last few games. And I think it's time for Drake Callender to be back.
We have always been on this level where Ustari and Drake are like not vastly different talents. We've always been there, and we've always been reminding people like there's a very real world where Drake Callender is back as the team's starting goalkeeper. And we've acknowledged that Ustari has been playing great and he deserves the opportunity to continue as the number one, but that this was not a book that had or should have been shut. So I don't think this is a huge surprise to us. This is very similar of a goal to what Drake Callender allowed in the matchup versus Monterrey last year, except this one I actually feel much worse about, because this is the difference between us winning and losing. Like, we were never prepared to go win that Monterrey game. And while that Drake Callender blunder was a huge mistake, it wasn't the thing that cost us that game. This one cost us the game. He had a number of other, I mean, this was a really poor game for him, so great job on choosing him. But he had a number of other moments that were just really poor. Couple of balls just kicked straight to the other team. I want to get some of these minutes right. 57th minute, he goes for a punch. He gets a little bit of a finger on it, and so it distracts the receiver on the back end who's trying to head it in. But on another day, that is like an easy goal because he goes for the ball, misses it, abandons his spot. There was another really bad moment in the 36th minute where he misreads a cross and he goes out there trying to sort of defend it, and he finds himself way out of position and is lucky that nothing comes of it. So not only did I think he was poor on the second goal where he doesn't get down fast enough, I thought the goal that called offside in the second half, he also should have been more quicker to react to. Some real blunders with his feet. One that was just gave up an easy goal. Really, really tough game for him.
Yeah, and I always say goalkeeper is the most difficult position on the field because your actions immediately have consequences. You either play really well and get lauded as the hero, or you get blamed as the villain if you make those mistakes, because you have to be 100% the entire game. If you make a tiny error, you lose out. Oscar Ustari did not have a great game. I hope he can bounce back from this. He's a really good goalkeeper. And that's all I have to say on this matter. He's proven that he's good enough for this team, but I think
has he proven he's good enough for this team?
We don't have any other option though, do we? Drake Callender is injured,
correct.
so exactly.
No,
so right now we have absolutely no other option. He has to show up next game and has to put in a performance. This is where we're at with him, and we just have to accept that fact. I still think Drake Callender is a better goalkeeper, and when he comes back fully healthy after his injury, I hope he gets a better opportunity to prove himself. But in the meantime, Ustari is all we got.
Certainly. This is not a conversation about Rocco, for sure. Drake Callender probably, I think, is 8 weeks out from it in terms of this injury. And so maybe he's 6.5 or something like that until he can be back on the field. I don't know if it's different as a goalkeeper versus an outfield player, but so certainly Ustari is the guy for now. But this conversation, I think, is something that can lead to us going straight to Drake when he comes back. Not like we'll see what Drake looks like when he comes back, or Ustari's our guy for the rest of the year. Like, that's not where I think we should be. And I don't think that's where we should have been before this game, where, again, he had his worst performance. I don't want to crucify a guy for having a bad performance when a lot of guys didn't play particularly well. And in a run of games where a lot of bad performances have happened from a lot of players on the field. So it's not just this game, but if Inter Miami is going to be a team that has to defend more aggressively, they're not a team that's going to allow 3 shots a game. They're a team that's going to allow 13 shots a game. You have to seriously consider upgrading your shot stopping ability at goal. And one of the things that was so striking in those first couple games of the season is it felt like Inter Miami was able to control the game so effectively. They weren't giving up shots going the other way. That block that they sat into deep was so strong that they really weren't giving up opportunities, or 1 or 2 a game. And so you weren't asking your goalkeeper to be exceptional. That has changed. And it's been a sustained period where that's changed. And if that's what Inter Miami is going to be, I think you do have to sort of go with a better shot stopper, because again, one of those 2 goals that we think Ustari should have been better on, if Drake is better on them, you prevent the goal and you win this game. And so Drake has that type of potential where Ustari may be a better fit. He may fit in better to sort of whatever offense you're trying to create because he is a better passer. But if you're the type of team that's going to be put under pressure a lot, having a better shot stopper, I think, is hugely important. And Drake Callender, as we have seen for the last couple of years, can be a match winner for this team. And for a side that's not dominating, having a match winner as a goalkeeper can be a game changer.
Yep.
Okay, first award, and I'm giving out the Gotta Clean Your Barrel award.
Tadeo Allende.
Tadeo Allende.
Where did you get that from? He cleared his barrel and he cleaned his gun, and now when he shoots, he scores and hits his target. And finally, he scored twice this game. So cleaning his barrel worked.
I'll be honest, that is actually the right line of thinking, except you're a little premature. It's the player that needs to clean his barrel still, and that's Benjamin Kramaski. Had a golden opportunity in the 41st minute. Allende puts in a great cross to him. I mean, can you imagine if that becomes a goal and Allende finishes with 2 goals and an assist?
He would be man of the match.
He would have been man of the match. This thing with him being a forward is tough. And he's getting a lot of criticism, not because his play is undeserving of the criticism, but I did want to use him as a segue to talking about how a lot of these players are getting, I think, criticism that feels unfair based on the position they're being placed in. And I want to remind people that Benjamin Kramaski is a box-to-box midfielder being asked to play out of position. And so when he wasn't electric on the tap-in, that's unforgivable, or that's like a real problem, or that's a real mistake. But when he's not good at taking the ball very high up the field and whipping in an immediate cross, or stopping on a dime and juking out his defender and dribbling in and putting in a cross with his left foot, like those are winger things that he's being asked to do, winger skill sets. And he doesn't have those because he's not a winger. And it's not just Kramaski. It's Telasco Segovia, who's often being played out of position. It's Noah Allen, who's being asked to do so much defensively. And it's Federico Redondo, which is in the midfield. A lot of these really young players. David Ruiz early in the season was the same way. I would not be surprised if Baltasar Rodriguez, based on what we saw from the first 18 minutes, is in a similar situation.
We don't have wingers on this team.
These guys are being asked to do something that they are not really ready to do or trained to do, and probably doesn't really match their skill set. And so I just want to remind people to just take a little bit of a pause on some of the criticism for those guys. Todavilas when he's playing in the midfield. This is happening all over the field. And it is, I think, it's the coach's fault that this is happening more so than the players, I think. I have seen really positive signs of development from a lot of these guys, but there was a rumor about Juventus looking at Benjamin Kramaski earlier this week, and it's like people are like, that's not real. There's no way. And it's like, that's because when you watch him, you're projecting him as what he's playing, and Juventus is smart enough to realize that is not his job. That is not his role. And the things he actually should be doing, he's quite good at them. So I just want to remind everyone, can you blame him for missing the sitter? Yes. Was I hoping that he did tap it across to Yannick Bright so Yannick Bright could have gotten his first goal? Not in the moment, but after the fact, I wanted to play that off as the reasoning. But he's a young player playing way out of position.
I think I saw some really good things from Bena in this game, a couple of glimpses, but that immediately followed by his natural instinct of playing in the middle. And one example that comes to mind is he took on the right back, I'm not sure whose name it was, and rinsed him. Like beautiful. I thought it was a nutmeg or something. He did a skill and got past, and there was so much space for him to now run into, jet into. And immediately afterwards, his first reaction, as soon as he got into space, as soon as he was able to beat his man, was turn around and pass the ball into midfield instead of taking the ball and running with it. And that's not his fault because those are his instincts. He plays as a midfielder. And that can be applied to Segovia, that can be applied to potentially Baltazar. These are players that don't have the mindset to play on a wing because it's different. You have to be bold to take on your man. You have to be able to run in behind and put your jet engine on and just bomb down. And sometimes when you're a midfielder, you're more conservative. You want to find the right pass. You want to take your time on the ball. As a winger, you don't have that much time on the ball. You just take the ball and run. And those are the skills you need. But he doesn't have that, or at least not yet. And for that, you can't crucify him. And yes, you're absolutely right. You can call him out for missing that sitter. But the rest of it, I think he's doing just as good as he's being allowed to do. And that's where I leave it at.
I think there was 3 moments in this game, all in the sort of last 15 minutes of the first half, between minute 30 and 40, that pretty much exemplified the point I'm trying to get across here. Was all 3 times it was a different player making a run down the right side high. And the right play from the midfielder, whether it was Busquets or Lionel Messi, was to push the ball high and wide to the right. And one of the times it was to Kramaski, and he made the right run that he was supposed to make, and Messi made the right pass to find the open space, but he didn't have that sort of wiggle to get past the defender and put a cross in. So he stops and he has to pass back, and the sort of momentum of the play is done. And that's because he's a box-to-box midfielder. Similar moment of a few minutes earlier, I think, with Telasco Segovia being the guy who gets the ball. And he gets the ball. He also doesn't have the wiggle or the speed or the burst to get past the defender. So he stops, takes a step back, and then puts in a cross to Tadeo Allende. It gets deflected by the defender, but you can see that's like a skill set he has, is that attacking creative playmaker that Kramaski doesn't quite have. And then the third one, which does result in a goal, is Tadeo Allende getting high up the field, whipping in that cross, and it turns into, I guess not a goal, but it turns into the Kramaski opportunity that doesn't end up being a goal for Inter Miami. But that was a winger in Tadeo Allende doing winger things high up the field in the right position and having the ability and the instincts to just whip in the right ball. And so you got to stop putting Kramaski in that situation and expecting him to deliver like a winger would. And I think the same thing with Segovia, although Segovia is, I think, a little bit better in the final third. 3 different players, 3 different results, and the one you want is the one you got from an actual winger. Play more wingers on the wide side.
Get more wingers in the transfer window, because right now we don't have any. Maybe Fafa Pico, and that's about it.
Well, I think Tadeo Allende can do it fine, but
Yeah.
I agree with you. Maybe Baltasar is going to be that player, although I don't. Well, we'll talk about Baltasar, I'm sure. Okay. What's your first award?
I'm going to go with the True or False award.
Okay. True or false? Let me look at who deserves an award.
Don't cheat.
Is that cheating? True or false? This is Gonzalo Lujan, because you're about to ask, does he deserve to play? Or you're going to say he deserves to play, and I'm going to say false. Nailed it.
No, absolutely not. You just add one number in front of both true and false, and you'll get the answer. Is he a true 9 or is he a false 9? Or is he not a 9?
Okay.
The award goes to Tadeo Allende, because I saw some things from him yesterday that makes me think Alan Obondo is not ready to be our regular starter or regular backup striker. But maybe Tadeo Allende is. and not just as a backup, but when Luis Suarez goes off on family functions, when Luis Suarez is injured, or when Luis Suarez is not performing, Tadeo Allende may be a real option because you played him up top. You could have done that against Minnesota and you didn't do it. And I thought that was a mistake, but it worked and I liked it. And I want to get your opinion. Do you think he's a true nine or he's a false nine? Because I think there's something there. And that's something we need to, well, we've alluded to at the start of this podcast when you were analyzing the tactics. We can talk about it a bit more. But this is more a question for the future because I do want to see him in that position a few times now because I think he can do a job.
I want to start by denying your first thing that you said about Alan Obando. I think Obando can definitely be the backup striker. And in the one game he was given as a starter, we saw there's some real things there. He scored a goal against Dallas. I just think this is a Javier Mascherano issue, really.
Yeah.
I think Tadeo Allende is fine as a winger. I think he has a very specific skill set that can fit into this team effectively. A guy, when you're deep, can beat players over the top, and a guy that when you're trying to make that final pass can be the guy that makes the run to the near post or is at the edge of the 6-yard box and allows you to pull Messi and Suarez away from those areas, and they can do the things they want to do. I don't think he needs to be the striker to do that. Like, I think that can work with Suarez, but it is something that he can do if you give him the right service. And that's going back to our conversation about playing from the wide areas and whipping crosses in. Like, that's how you're going to get the most out of him. Yes, we've seen him early in the season beat guys over the top and pull down the ball and get a nice shot off, but that is like one tool he has that isn't going to work every single game. This is another tool he has where he can be the guy in the 6-yard box that gets the tap in, but you're only going to score those if you're out wide whipping in crosses. You're not going to score that if you're Messi at the edge of the 18-yard box trying to either find Suarez or trying to whip in a shot of your own. So I think it could work, yeah, but I'm not quite there as if we're going to do it.
No, absolutely. But I think there's definitely potential here. And he has the instincts of a striker, at least somebody who can get on the end of a cross, somebody who can find the right pockets of space. He has a shot on him as well, and he's really good physically. So he has all the assets. He's big, he's imposing. And in instances where you need that presence in the box, put him up there. Right? Of course, Alan Obando being your backup striker, but this is an option. He's a quality player in the forward line. And I think this is something that we need to use more often as a tool because I can see a scenario where we need a goal towards the last couple of minutes of the game. Remember last season when Luis Suarez drifted off to the left, we had Campana in the middle as a striker. We can do something like that, explore new things because we need to do that in order to score goals right now. And I saw some good things from Allende, and that's why I wanted to give him an award and have a conversation about him in this regard.
Yeah, and by the way, I think if you played Obando and Allende together, you would have a real threat on those crosses because those are both
4-4-2, both sides. Oh, that'd be good.
Exactly. And so for a team that's struggling to create offense, to not be playing around with what we're doing is crazy to me. But if you had Jordi Alba and Ian Frey on the wide sides, whipping in crosses to Allende and Obando, like you're going to score some goals like that. So I agree. I think that's a good award. Okay, my next award is the Forgotten But Not Gone Award.
Forgotten But Not Gone Award. And I know perfectly well who this award goes to. It's David Martinez.
I do want to remind you that you just told me not to cheat a little bit ago, but it does go to David Martinez. Yeah, okay.
How did I cheat? That was me absolutely thinking because I had an award for him, which was very not similar, but I had an award for him as well. And yeah, I knew he was a player that, hasn't been used recently. And I think he's the only one who's been brought back into the fold. So
Forgotten But Not Gone. He looked really good for 14 minutes.
So good. We needed sharpness in that back line. We needed somebody to just command the ball and just be a little bit of a boss,
here's one of the things that Inter Miami's been missing a lot with the sort of preferred 11 of Javier Mascherano is guys that win the ball. Because the guys that are good at that at center back are Toto Aviles, who steps up and wins the ball. David Martinez, who steps up and wins the ball. Yannick Bright, who's everywhere and is winning the ball everywhere. And then when you play Federico Redondo and Chelo Weigandt and Maxi Falcone or Gonzalo Lujan and no out, like you lose the ball winning ability, both in the midfield and the back line. And we have been talking a lot about Toto Aviles and Ian Frey and for a minute there, Yannick Bright. This guy can do it too, man. He's got real injury concerns. He's not going to be on this team forever. But in the meantime, he can ball. Javier Mascherano likes his left-sided center backs, or he likes to have his center backs be towards their preferred foot. And I think David Martinez can get some more minutes. And Noah Allen, who's played a ton this year and has, I thought, been very good. Like he does, nobody has to start on this game and on this team every single game. Play David Martinez a little bit.
I'll put it this way. When Inter Miami was playing 2 games a week, Saturday, Wednesday, David Martinez had to be starting in one of those games. There's no excuse not to start him. I understand he has injury concerns, but he had to be starting. He showed yesterday that he's stylish, man. He's adventurous. He's exciting. He puts a little bit of adventure in your backline. And I know Javier Mascherano doesn't like that. He wants conservatism.
Yeah, exactly.
But David Martinez just knows when to push up, just does things with the ball. And you're like, you know what? He's an older version, maybe less exciting, but somewhat similar to Ian Frey, where you see that spark and you're like, oof, okay, this is a fun player to watch. He may not do everything right all the time, but this is a fun player to watch. And yesterday I thought he was really good when he came on because our defense was suffering. And we've talked about being stale and being stagnant. He brought in freshness that I enjoyed watching. And that for me is such a disservice to his minutes that he's got this season because he deserves more. So play him, man. Play him. Absolutely.
He's our 5th choice center back now. Maybe 4th. Maybe he's ahead of Toto. But certainly not in that front 3 with Falcone, Gonzalo Lujan, and Maxi Falcone and Noah Allen. Those 3. In terms of what Javier Mascherano thinks, this guy would be the best center back on like half the teams in this league, and he barely plays at all for Inter Miami. And he only got to play because Javier Mascherano wanted to move Jordi Alba up, and the chain reaction is his only option was to move Noah Allen to left back, and then he wanted a left-sided center back in, so David Martinez went in. But he's not ever a part of the game plan. He is ultra aggressive, which is really fun as a fan, and for a team that needs a spark and needs someone to come in with just confidence and energy and go be a protagonist in the game. He does that. But like you said, it's exactly what Javier Mascherano hates in the center back. So I don't think we're going to see him much, and that's a shame because he's a really, really good player when he's healthy.
And he's one of the reasons we actually dominated the last 10 minutes, by the way. He won the ball a lot, and he just did what he had to do. But I agree with you. I don't think we see much of him. Anyways.
Okay, last award.
I'm going to go with the Last King of Babylon award.
Can I ask you, is this a pop culture / film award, or is this a historical award?
It's a historical award.
Okay. The Last King of Babylon is someone from the Middle East. You're giving it to Mo Salah?
Yeah, because Mo Salah plays for Inter Miami. By the way, 100% would take Mo Salah at Inter Miami.
Dude, you know, I was thinking about that. Okay, little tangent. There was talk about KDB people trying to make KDB the next sort of face of Inter Miami once Messi is gone. And I was like, Mo Salah. No. Now, I think for sure he's going to end up in Saudi Arabia. But that's definitely who I would much rather have. And I don't even like Liverpool. Okay. What is it? The Last King of Babylon? Sorry. I'm going to go with Baltasar because we haven't talked about him yet. And you told me that we aren't going to talk about Segovia. So give me the Baltasar.
I started laughing because I just watched a clip of Chelo Weigandt trying to put a cross in, missing the ball completely, and then it going out for a goal kick.
Can you explain what you mean by this award?
Okay, I will. The Last King of Babylon. So, for those of you who are not familiar, the last king of Babylon was King Balthazar, who was one of the
I
three
didn't know that.
kings who took a gift to Jesus Christ when he was born. So, King Balthazar, a historical figure, I thought apt for Balthazar Rodriguez's first game. Guys, he's real. He is not fake, but apparently he's made of glass because he lasted 10 minutes, had a goal contribution, and then decided that he's going to take an early shower. Again, don't want to make fun of that. It obviously got injured. Unfortunate. But what I saw from him in those first 15 minutes that he debuted for Inter Miami, I thought one action very positive. The rest of it, eh, 15 minutes isn't nearly enough to make a judgment. So good
Yeah.
on him for getting involved, and I'm glad that he got that assist because what a ball into the box, by the way. What a ball.
Listen, I've seen Kramaski make the same exact pass. I've seen Fafa Pico make the same pass. Like, it was the right play at the right time, and I thought it feels like this team has been a little bit infected with the lack of confidence, and he came on and didn't look like he had that. So I thought that was great. He gets involved. I don't know if he ended up getting an official assist because I think there was a little bit of a tap in, but he probably should have from the defender. But I agree with you. It was too short to really take anything away from it. I hope he's a superstar. We've said this over and over. I don't think anyone should realistically go in there after this and say he's a superstar or he's a bust. Too soon to tell. And unfortunately, it looks like 2 more weeks of winter, 3 more weeks of winter. They said today that it was a recurring injury from what he's been dealing with, which is this hamstring injury. But I don't know. I think
No,
he's okay. I think he's fine. I mean, but I
yeah,
don't think he's
but
a
the
difference
thing is,
maker
he needs
yet.
to be available soon, and I hope he gets better soon. But I just wanted to give him an award because we've been waiting for him to show up, and for all intents and purposes, those 15 minutes he didn't put too much of a foot wrong and got a goal contribution. So well done to him. But again, use the wings, right? Use your wide players to be able to create opportunities, and that's what we did. So we need to utilize whoever is playing in that position more, and that's how we're going to create opportunities.
The other thing I will say, he didn't look particularly explosive or fast. He looks like
He
he's going to
looked
be
like
very
another
similar,
Benjamin Kramaski. I'll be
or
honest with you.
Telasco Segovia,
Or
or
Telasco
like someone like
Segovia.
that. Like
Yeah.
he looks to me like another midfielder that's going to be
Who's
played as a
playing as a
wide player.
winger. Yeah.
But I do want to at least remind everyone that while he didn't look particularly explosive or dynamic, he's also coming back from a hamstring injury that he's clearly not
Yeah.
100% from. So he may look like that player in 3 months when he's had a chance to get both into shape, into form, and recovered from the hamstring injury. So I don't want to say anything bad or positive about him other than it was good to see that he was real, and hopefully he's back in 2 weeks or something, and it's not a 6 to 8 week kind of injury.
Absolutely.
There's a couple other players I want to talk about, but there's a couple other stories I want to talk about. So let me just run through and you stop me if you want to get to them. Federico Redondo, fine.
Nothing much.
Alan Obando didn't do much, but again, he had some nice touches. Like it didn't feel like he had that one golden opportunity, but I didn't think he was a distraction or anything like that. Chelo Weigandt, still don't understand why he's starting. Messi, still kind of not in great form.
I did have an award for him that I didn't want to give because I would have been completely crucified online. So I'm glad I didn't give that award, but I'll save it for a rainy day.
He was involved in 2 goals.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's fair to say that this recent stretch has been the worst he's in terms of his form. It's been the worst he's been at Inter Miami, and I didn't think this was him like emerging out of that as a new player. 2 assists or hockey assists, but again, he wasn't like ball dominant and just blowing past people and just doing the crazy things that he's done so much. So hopefully that comes back this weekend.
He looks a step short. That's what it is.
Noah Allen and Maxi Falcone, they didn't look great in this game. No. Falcone gets the goal, so his ratings don't look that bad, but I thought they really struggled. And this defense, which felt so strong for so many months of the season, feels like it's collapsing, and it's a confidence thing. It's a performance thing. And part of it feels like the entire team chemistry is off, and it's affecting what was supposed to be the strength, which is this defense. Lujan, we've talked about. Noah Allen feels like his performances have dropped. He had a couple bad passes in this game. Maxi Falcone didn't look great, and that's pretty rare for him. You worried about the center backs?
I'm not worried about the centre backs personnel wise. I'm just worried that we're now getting at a stage when Javier Mascherano is not getting the results, and he's going to start giving instructions that are going to be contrary or different to what he's been wanting us to play. And that's going to make us suffer in certain positions, defense being one of them, because he's been asking us to play a very deep line for the last 10, 15 games. And now, if he's going up to play a higher line, if he wants the team to score more goals, if he's pushing Jordi Alba up, that creates an incongruency with our back line, who are now going like, okay, our instructions were to sit back. What do we do now? So the coaching staff has to deal with it. It's not the players themselves. You've seen the players have the talent, have the ability, have the capability. You just got to insert the right instructions and honestly the right attitude and positivity in the back line, because they felt like a unit that wasn't necessarily on the same page. And as soon as David Martinez came on, he was like, hold on, everyone, let me calm things down. I'm going to show you how it's done. And it was freshness. It was something different. It was something that someone was taking command and control. You said it, it felt like a team devoid of confidence. And I guess that's what it is. I don't think it's down to the individual players, because Maxi Falcone is phenomenal. Noah Allen is brilliant. Gonzalo Lujan is terrible, but let's not even talk about him. But yeah, this team isn't bad players. It's just bad coaching.
I'm worried though, because they moved Jordi Alba up and conceded 7 goals. And Maxi Falcone only played one of those games. Noah Allen, I didn't think played particularly well in either. He's a young player. That's going to happen. But if you're moving Jordi Alba up and you don't have 3 midfielders that can kind of control transition opportunities, you're going to be putting these guys under a lot of pressure. And one of the things we've come to with both Lujan and Falcone is they're not super pacey or physical. No. And so while Falcone, I think, is very instinctual and finds himself in the right place, very good technique, that can still be a problem if you're not athletic enough to keep up with some of the really pacey players, especially the guys like what we saw against Minnesota. And in this game, in the first few minutes with Chicho Arango, he was finding space. He was out physicaling guys. I'm just starting to have the seeds of nervousness about our center backs being able to play and handle themselves in a situation where you actually need your fullbacks and your midfielders to be a part of the offense as a major part of the game plan. And you're going to have to do more one-on-one defending. You're going to have to be smarter in where you're positioning yourself. You're going to have to be more physical. Seeds of nervousness are starting to be planted, but I'll
push back against it a little bit. We did play against a side that's scored the most goals in the league, 29 goals. They're really good. So that can maybe something that you can use to justify it, but we'll see. I agree with you. It's a little bit concerning, but we'll see.
Gonzalo Lujan.
No, we're not talking about him.
Why coming into this game as a fullback? Okay.
No idea. Absolutely no idea.
The last player I want to talk about was Segovia, because he is, I thought, very strangely used and has continued to be very strangely used over the past couple months. He starts the game as like the highest player for the first half an hour. He was like the de facto striker, playing as sort of a false rotating or roaming 9. Takes himself out of the game all the time, is not able to get on the ball. They're asking him to get on the end of passes when he doesn't have that sort of quick area burst to do that. I don't understand what's happening. And then in the last hour, he plays deeper. Allende goes to the top of the pitch. You start scoring goals. He starts being, especially in the last sort of 40 minutes, a real part of the buildup where he's excellent. He's getting separation in terms of his spacing from Messi. And when that happens, he really has an opportunity to operate in an effective way. And so he starts putting in transition passes and he becomes a much more effective player. I just wish he would be deeper and not higher up. And it feels like Javier Mascherano's instinct is to play this midfielder higher up the pitch instead of farther back. I don't get it.
You've said it all, so I don't want to add too much to it, but I'm going to say one line, and that's, you said it may be worth playing a more defensive midfield or a defensive-minded midfield or a midfield that can deal with Jordi Alba being higher up. My ideal midfield is Sergio Busquets, Yannick Bright, and Telasco Segovia. That's my ideal midfield.
Same. As we were talking about Kramaski, I think many of the same lessons applied to Telasco Segovia. Okay, two other topics I want to get into. One, briefly, but how much nicer is it to listen to Taylor Twellman when he's not hating on the best team in the league, and he's actually pointing out that Ian Frey should be playing.
It's simple.
There's no reason Yannick Bright isn't starting all of your games.
He listens to our podcast. Taylor, I know you're out there. I know you're listening. I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you.
No, it's like, it's so obvious. All the decisions that are being made poorly, that even the broadcast is like, what are we doing here, guys? Why, And he mentioned at some point in the first half, he was like, I think even Inter Miami fans are getting frustrated. And that, for a second, I was like, I do think he listens. I think he's listening to us. Maybe not this podcast, but our spirit that we're putting out there of Ian Frey and Totavilos and stuff. Okay, joking aside, I do want to talk about Luis Suarez for a minute, because I think there's two interesting questions here. One, is it not weird that he missed 2 games to go to a wedding? We didn't know that he missed the first game because of a wedding. It was just a personal issue. And while I think in general that's pretty weird for his brother-in-law's wedding, and I don't know what even that means. Does that mean he's marrying Luis's sister? What does that mean, his brother-in-law's wedding? I don't know. Okay. Maybe my brain's gone after 90 minutes of this. But the fact that he missed 2 games, I'm assuming this wedding was in South America. It is not a farther distance to travel by much to go from Uruguay to Miami versus Uruguay to San Jose. It's going to be an 8-hour, 9-hour, 10-hour flight regardless. It's not like you're substituting a 1-hour flight for a 6-hour flight. Why is this man missing 2 games? And is that just the reflective of the privilege that he has as Luis Suarez, which I can kind of understand? Or is that like things aren't going great and I'd rather not rush back to be a part of this because vibes aren't particularly good.
I hate being that kind of fan that creates more speculation and uncertainty at a time when there's plenty around. So I will actually prescribe to the first point that you made, which is I think he has the privilege because of his status to say, listen, guys, this is a family thing and I'm going to sit out 2 games. You're going all the way to San Jose. I'll join you back in Miami. I think that's more the case than him being like, oh, I want to sit out because I don't think Inter Miami is doing well. I don't think he's that kind of a player. He's a player, when he's not doing well, he wants to go in there and actually, get involved rather than run away from the situation. So I don't want to create that narrative that says he's unhappy or dissatisfied. Now, if the news comes out that that's the case and there's something going on, then for sure. But I think it's more the fact that he has that privilege and status as the player that he is and what he's done for world football. I think Javier Mascherano has given him that leeway of being like, it's okay. These 2 games don't make sense for you to be part of, so it's fine.
Okay, just FYI, John in the chat is saying the wedding was in Spain, which does add to the trip. But again, an 8-hour trip versus a 13-hour trip, I think is not that huge of a difference if you're already crossing the country. Crossing the ocean. Second, like a wedding, I would imagine was on Saturday. This game was 4 days later. Like that's not, oh, I'm hungover, let me have the day off, and then another travel day. Like he had plenty of time to get back, and still fully enjoyed his brother's or his stepbrother's wedding, or his not stepbrother, brother-in-law, whatever it was. And also, I just want
sister's wedding. That means
I don't know, dude. Okay. Anyways,
it's a Spanish thing,
I guess. And also, I didn't want to imply that he was unhappy. I just I was just wondering if the vibes aren't great around the locker room. And if that's the case, if you're going to go have fun with your family, you're not maybe
might as well do that for a long time. No, I get what you mean. Absolutely. So, and
I didn't
again,
mean to imply
what I said that it probably, him deserving the stature, what he's done for football and all that, I still think it's unprofessional. Your team is playing two games. For me, I think that's a no-no. You take one game, fine. Like 2 games, no, dude, you got to be back in training immediately. So, especially when your team's down and out right now, But that's a personal opinion.
Brother-in-law for Suarez is the brother of Luis's wife. Thank you, Gabriella. 90 minutes of talking has fried my brain. So maybe we should end it there. And I'll just say, I think it's fair to let everyone decide whether they think it's right or wrong. Like, we don't have to be the arbiters of that, and I don't think we should be. So I just wanted to bring it up because I thought it was interesting that it was his brother's wedding and his brother's wedding. Okay, I'm just going to stop there. So our final thoughts on this game, or do you have any thoughts for Orlando City on Sunday?
Orlando City, rival game, smash them 6-0. Otherwise, I'm going to riot. No, in all seriousness, good positive signs from this game that we need to build on. Bad things as well that we need to cut out of our game. So a lot of work to do, but it gave me a bit of hope. And this was more positive than it's been for a while. So I took away a lot from this game, and I think there's something to build on. So let's go out and do more of that against Orlando.
Well, if you'll indulge me for a second, because I think I spent most of the instant reaction talking about this, and so we didn't get into it a ton here, but there was actually a lot of frustrating decisions made in this game that we didn't talk about. We skipped over the Lujan thing, but I think this was like a step sideways towards maybe something, but it wasn't like an obvious step in the right direction. They didn't make a ton of changes to the personnel. Aside from Jordi Alba playing up, they didn't do a lot different from like the way the coach would have told them to play. So I don't know. I still think that the seat should be very, very hot. And I told you guys after the Vancouver game, it was this up until this Orlando City game. Like he should get up until this Orlando City game, give him 4 games to try and bounce back. But the bounce back hasn't been particularly strong. I will remind you that they won 22 out of 24 points after the CONCACAF Champions Cup elimination last year. Right now, they've won 4 out of 9, and they're playing the rival on Sunday. So last year, they responded by going on and looking like the best team in the MLS. Certainly, they don't look like that. A couple stats I want to throw your way because I did want to get into this and we ran over. Inter Miami, 5th in the East right now. If they win the game in hand, they would go to 4th. So it's not like that game in hand is a huge jump for them. 7th in the Supporter Shield table. But here's the real number. Since April 1st, they played that first LAFC leg on April 2nd. So basically since that LAFC first leg, they are 20th in the league in terms of points, in the Supporter Shield table. And there's no games in hand. We haven't played enough games. They are 20th in the league in the last 6 weeks. I think a lot of people have been willing to say, oh, he's only lost 2 games. He's only whatever. But the stats of late are really, really poor. They are not on pace to qualify for next year's CONCACAF Champions Cup. You have to qualify for that. And that hasn't really been a doubt for us since we won the Leagues Cup in 2023. It's fully in doubt now. Things are bad. And a draw against a playoff San Jose team, but not a superstar San Jose team, doesn't necessarily alleviate much of the suspicion there. So I still think the seats should be very hot.
Absolutely. We're not doing well with the points, man. We only got 1 point, so nothing's changed as such. But you got to take the positives.
Does that number surprise you? 20th in the league
not at
for
all.
6 weeks?
No, we haven't been good at all.
That's way below average. Yeah. When I counted that up, I was like, this feels
bad,
worse than I was expecting. Okay, guys, we'll leave it there because we'll actually get sad and depressed if we go any further. We'll be back 1 hour before the game for the pregame show, as always, on Sunday. Big rivalry game, would be a huge confidence boost if they can come out and play well. Are you expecting them to play the Vancouver lineup? Or do you think we'll get some rotation after playing 2 games and 3, having to play a third game?
What's rotation under Javier Mascherano? Luan's going to start. Allen's going to start. Redondo's going to start. Anyways, thank you so much for watching.
So the Vancouver lineup. All right, guys. You heard it from here. Have a great night, and we will see you guys on Sunday. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.